Okay, overcoming micro inequities imposed on female in a male-dominated profession. Well, about, 6 years ago, I attended a seminar at the company I work as a system engineer, and I really didn't know what I was facing until I heard the seminar, and I thought, oh, I've been enduring micro inequities and didn't know what I was engaged in. So, hence my topic, and I would like to share with you today how to overcome some of the micro inequities in my male-dominated profession. So today I'll talk about maybe 4 major topics. What are micro inequities? Give you some examples of them, and then recognizing and dealing with them, and finally a few recommendations for action. Okay, micro inequities are apparently small events that are often ephemeral and hard to prove, events which are covert, often unintentional, frequently unrecognized by the perpetrator, which occur whenever people are perceived to be different. And this is Mary Rowe's definition, and she actually was the one who coined this phrase, micro inequities, at MIT back in 1973. So just when I was starting to get involved in engineering, she was there talking about micro inequities, which is really interesting, her study, but I'm not talking about her study today. According to Wikipedia, micro inequity is a theory that refers to hypothesized ways in which individuals are either singled out, overlooked, ignored, or otherwise discounted based on their unchangeable characteristics such as race or gender. And, according to me, a male-dominated profession is one where men are more than 75% of the employees and over 90% of the executives in that field. That was my definition. Body language is plays a big part in micro inequities. I can't hear you for seeing what you do, and that's one of the major parts. Research shows that very little is transmitted in terms of communication by the words we say. Most of it is due to the pitch and how it's delivered, the micro messages that we give as we're given that word, like, I really like you, or I really like you, or I really like you. So all of those, the words are the same, but how it's delivered shows a different way in which the message is delivered, or the message in those words. So in micro messages in our workforce, they are dealing with how you are either included or excluded from certain important information for your profession. So an inequity can be a deliberate attempt to harm someone, or it could be unintentional, and it might be just rooted in the person's subconscious. So Dr. Mary Rowe I talked about, she termed that phrase micro inequity. Then work was done by Jean-Paul Sartre, who wrote about small acts of anti-Semitism, and Chester Pierce wrote also about microaggressions. And all of these are terms that kind of came about in the early 70s, along with microaffirmation, which is a term I'll get into a little later. So some examples of micro inequities. If you're given a presentation or you're trying to tell your boss something, and he constantly interrupts you before you get the sentence out. Whereas another person of a different gender or race, and they are listened to until they finish their complete sentence, then they are responded to. Or of course, for example, you are the expert on, let's say, RF technology. And there is someone who comes into your group to understand how is that going to be affected in your project, and you are not invited to that discussion. You're intentionally being left out. Or you're trying to speak with someone who's constantly reading their iPad or on their BlackBerry, and they aren't giving you the attention that you need in order to convey the information that you want to convey. Or you are talking to me and I'm constantly looking at my watch to see, well, when are you going to be done because I have something more important to do. Or I just happen to just roll my eyes because you asked, where is the bathroom again? Whatever. My name is Deloris, and I introduce you as Jack or Joe. And I know that your name is Jack or Joe or James. Mispronouncing or misspelling your name, changing in your pitch of voice when you're talking to them. Whenever someone has to force a smile just because you're there, listening to you with their arms folded. He unfolds his arms. He's just cold. Or praising an idea that Betsy explained to you that Deloris just explained the same idea, but of course Betsy used it in a different tone, and now it's a great idea. Or hovering over someone, making them uncomfortable in doing what they need to do. Or in the last case, replying with sarcasm. This is Dr. Ernest Hicks. He worked at Xerox, and he came up with this phrase. If you search him on YouTube, you'll find an excellent presentation about him, how he talks about micro inequities in the workforce. And he was mostly talking at Cornell University. So I wanted to share with you a few personal examples with me in the engineering field. We had a really tough design in digital design. I'm a hardware digital engineer, so I had to do a digital design, and I had to have components from various parts of the country. And when I put them all together, of course, it didn't work. So I spent hours and hours trying to figure out why they didn't work and troubleshooting the boards, making them work, figuring it out, and finally got it to work. And the engineers came in, and the first thing they asked me was, who helped you do this? Not how did you do it, but who helped you do this? I said, me and that invisible person here. But this is some of the things. They meant no harm. I know them personally. I know what their hearts are. But still, who helped you do this? Another micro inequity occurred a few years ago with me. I'm Jane Doe here in this example. Joe Doe, I was called onto a program to help Joe Doe solve some very hard problems. And within 3 months on the program, I would say 80% of the problems went away. So the manager of the overall program decided, well, I'd rather have her do the work than Joe. So it is customary in our company to send out announcements so everyone will know who's the person in charge. So this is the announcement that went out. Joe Doe worked for company X, Y, and Z in several leadership position roles. He successfully completed programs on A, B, and C, I can't tell you what they are, but get the picture. He mentored and completed projects for customers TY, TUV. And Jane Doe will be taking his place, and she's working on a doctorate. So you can imagine the awe I felt when this came out. However, before I could respond, my manager was in my office apologizing. Oh, I just thought you would just not want people to know how old you are. I don't care if you know how old I am. I thank God for my years, each and every one of them, all 49 of them. No. But it doesn't matter to me, and it didn't at that point. But I understood that he thought he was having my best interest in mind, but still this is subconsciously something that he was harboring about himself and how he felt is to be presented. Couple more examples. Taking notes during the meeting. Often asked, please, well, you have such a beautiful handwriting. Why don't you take notes? And you're the only female in the room. So some of the times I might take notes, especially if I'm very interested in the notes, but unfortunately no one else can read my notes. So I would say, I would gladly take the notes, but I think I'm much better at doing this. And maybe Jack here would like to take notes this time. So deflecting that became a way that I work with them. Introduction of the customers and the department. I remember I worked at Edwards Air Force Base, and we went to deliver a product. And for some reason, Bob and I, and that's a real name, I'm sorry, we both worked on the project, and we were to deliver this product to the customer after hours. And they assumed that Bob was the engineer, and they didn't really know who I was, maybe the technician or what. So they addressed all the concerns, all the issues to Bob, and of course Bob had to say, well, Deloris, what do you think? And they were really, really amazed, and unfortunately, this only happened a few times, but it was enough to have an impact on you. So properly introducing who your key people are was a problem that happened during this field. So as a new manager, in instruction, during restructuring, in our company and in most of the aerospace company, we have restructuring. And restructuring is a fancy word for layoffs and reorganization. So one of the things that happened was I decided, I had been a manager in my previous company, and I'd go for a manager position here. So one of the engineers who was at the company for 25 years, he decided he didn't like the idea that I had been chosen as manager of the software engineering group. So he came to my office and said, I'd like to speak with you. Sure. So he sat down, he says, can you tell me why they chose you over me? And I said, well, apparently they thought I was more qualified, but let's talk about it. What were you seeking? And I tried to help him get situated in what he was wanting to do, because he felt that all of his grooming had been for this position, and then at the last minute it was taken away from him. So I understood that he was a good guy. Most of them are good guys, but at the same time they really do not understand that some of the things and words that they say are micro inequities that they portray toward others. The last thing that I want to talk about is huge salary disparity. And this particular example was from a manager starting out in the field that hired me into the company. and hired another guy into the company at the same time. Unfortunately, through a lot of scenarios, I found out that he came in at 20% higher, no, $20,000 higher than I started. And I ended up doing his work and being head of all the projects. So I went to the managers and I thought, I think I need a salary adjustment because I'm doing his work and all the other work, and I think you should make an adjustment. Of course, he said, I said, but can you tell me, what was the reasoning that you gave him this salary? And the micro inequity there was that he felt that I just didn't know if you could do any work. But he didn't know if the other guy could do any work either. So he smiled, he says, I'm really sorry, but I can't correct it. The only thing you can do is quit and come back in. So there were some things that happened, and it was really, really, for me, I could have been hurt, or I probably was hurt, I don't remember. Did I complain? Probably did. But at the same time, I knew that I needed to move on, which is what he's telling me to. Okay, so scholarly research shows that this happens on an unconscious basis in most instances. And they reinforce our sense of isolation and send strong messages that women do not get the same respect as men, even if they are doing the same jobs. So there's some negative effects of micro inequities. You feel devalued, low self-esteem, decreased morale, a sense that you aren't being listened to, poor communication, and in a male-dominated field, the only way to overcome these things are micro-affirmations. In other words, take time to listen to everyone that is in the room. And I'm trying to speed up, but okay. So also they found that you have an increase in discrimination complaints, and overall, you have poor retention of some really sharp engineers. So, how do you overcome them? Recognize and rehearse appropriate response. I've been in the field for quite a while, 40 years, so I got quite a few responses that I can call from. So sometimes you want to rehearse what you would hear, what you would say when these things occur. Whenever possible, handle it in the moment, tactfully though. The whole goal is not to embarrass or destroy the other person. You want to educate them, to help them understand that what you have to say and what you have to offer is just as important, if not better, than the other person. And then discuss with a trusted friend. I like Dr. Mo's suggestion about one friend. You have to have a trusted friend, someone that you can call on the carpet. Just the other day, we were in a meeting, and I made a comment to where we had some executives, and one of the executives says, "Oh, we don't want to be negative." And I thought, gee, that comment didn't sound negative to me. And so I turned to a trusted friend. I said, "Was my comment negative?" She goes, "No, I don't think so." So after the meeting, I went right over to the executive. I said, "You know what? I did not mean for that comment to be, no, it wasn't negative." But in his comment to the whole group, he had said it was negative. So you have to be in the moment. Don't let things go. Have a crucial conversation with a repeated offender. If someone is, schedule a time when you can sit down with them and share instances in which you found that these comments were coming, to help educate them, and maybe let them know that your whole goal is to educate, not to offend, but to make sure that the person coming behind you will be able to share and be heard and be understood. All else fail, remove yourself from the environment. There's no need to beat your head against a brick wall. There's plenty of other opportunities out there for you. Both Young and Rowe agree that to bring these kind of micro inequities to the forefront of the conversation. If an employee feels that they are unjustly or being not handled or not heard or not listened to, it is their obligation to bring it to management's attention, and it is management's job to do something about it. So these are my references, and I thank you for your time.